Hey, good morning. We will go ahead and get started. So thank you all for being here for our final Coffee with the Community for the 2016-17 school year. I want to provide quick recognition to our crew in the back who oftentimes goes sight unseen, that being our broadcasting staff. Particularly today, we have some students from KLHS, from Liberty High School, that are filming and assisting as well. So we could not facilitate these events, let alone get them out on our YouTube site as well as our website without their help. So thank you to Dallas Communications Department and our students that are here with us this morning. So again, welcome to our final Coffee with the Community, and this is really intended to be a district update over the course of this year, but then also looking a little bit forward into what the 17-18 school year has in store. We do have a couple of our board members here this morning, that being AJ Bird and Kent Peterson, so I appreciate them being here with us this morning. To dive right into our presentation then, a couple of things that we always want to try to begin with, that being our district mission, vision, and values. Inspire and equip all learners to discover their voice and unlimited potential. A future-focused community with a passion for lifelong learning, and then our values of excellence, integrity, collaboration, innovation, and growth. We need to message those frequently so that people understand what that expectation that our community has of us, but then certainly what we aspire to as Liberty Public Schools. In addition to those three elements, our goals are captured here along with our mission-critical commitments tied to these categories of a vertically aligned curriculum, instructional innovation, personal and social growth in a safe and secure environment, a future-focused professional, and then community partnerships and communication, and then finally, stewardship via fiscal responsibility. So those are our focal points that then you should be able to tie the items that we present this morning back to as we relate it back to our strategic plan. So to dive right in respect to this year, as we take a look back, we had a visit from the Advanced Ed Accreditation System. And as we were preparing for that visit, we wanted to give them a glimpse of Liberty Public Schools. More importantly, the community that we all live and work in. And so as we thought about it, we wanted to try to capture the best of our community. And so if you look through each of these pictures above, it includes that small town feel like you would get if you visited the square. But then if you go a little bit further north to our industrial park, you'll see industry alive and well as it relates to companies like Holland 1916 or Magna, or a little bit further south at the Ford plant. You also have the impact of the college setting on our school district and our community through William Jewell and a couple of other higher education partners. You also have a fine arts program that is unlike any other, and I would say even in the country, as we celebrate the arts and we try to create those opportunities for our students in grades K through 12. You also have the value of partnership, as businesses join up with students in settings like what you see here at Bank Liberty in respect to students getting relevant learning experiences outside of the classroom. And then finally, you have everything that the greater metropolitan area has to offer. This is a pretty cool glimpse of Liberty Public Schools and the community that we live in, that we're able to work in, but then certainly to be able to tap into in terms of the best of all of these areas. So as we were conveying that with the Advanced Ed Accreditation team, it really caused us to think, wow, we have exciting times that we live in. We have a lot of opportunities in front of us, and we certainly want to provide students with the best opportunities that they are due. Taking a glimpse at the end of March at our total student enrollment. This captures our enrollment in grades early childhood all the way through 12th grade. So you can see each of our campuses, each of our buildings. The number that I want to pull out is the bottom right-hand corner at 12,489. Again, this is as of the end of March, so that may have changed just a little bit, but in total, nearly 12,500 students as we wrap up the 2016-2017 school year. As we look to the next year, we continue to grow at a rate of about 2 to 3% annually, which causes some strains on our system as we look at our staffing needs, our budgetary needs, but then certainly our facility needs as well, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Some additional data points that we would like to point out, along with our student enrollment, we hold currently 981 certificated staff, 833 support staff. We were fortunate to have a high performance rate on our annual performance report back in the fall when we received that of 98.2%. Our ACT composite of 21.7. Our goal is to get over that 22 composite score here in the coming years. College and career placement is right at about 75%. And then over on the left, you can see that we're a relatively affluent community with a free and reduced lunch rate of about 19%, albeit as you break it down by our buildings, you have some buildings that well exceed that, closer to 50 to 60% free and reduced lunch rate, depending upon where you're located. English language learners, we have approximately 172 with 35 different languages spoken, which is pretty phenomenal, in that we bring and we draw families from all different walks of life into Liberty Public Schools. In addition, our special populations for gifted students, special education students, you can see that there, and then our footprint between the Liberty side and the Kansas City side covers an entirety of about 85 square miles. So just some of the high points as it relates to facts in terms of the school district. To get specific into our categories of human resources, finance, operations, and academic services over the course of this year, we wanted to highlight a few areas. The first of which being our certificated staff and some historical data that we've seen. If you go all the way back to 1990, 91 to present, you can see our trajectory as we've added staff. Looking at 1990, 91, where we had 270 certified staff, to nearly where we're at today in 2016, 2017, pushing nearly 900 staff across the system. That again is those teachers that have a certificate that are in a classroom. In addition, you have your administrators that hold a certificate, counselors, and librarians. In addition to our certificated staff over the years, if you look at their degree of education, this is an important piece, and that as you look at our trend line going back to 2008-9 to present, you can see that teachers that possess a master's degree or higher, that percentage has grown over the years from 67% all the way to 77.6%. Similarly, if you look at the bachelor's column, you can see that those that solely hold a bachelor's degree went from 32.3% down to 22.4%. The point in this slide is that we have very highly qualified staff working with our kids, and that's what we desire. That fulfills one of those strategic, those mission critical commitments that we pointed out earlier, that being a commitment to high quality staff and high quality professionals. In addition to that, years of experience, as we look at that information, we also have a veteran team from the standpoint of their overall years of experience. Historically, going back to 2004, 2005, that percentage of teachers on that top yellow line there of 6 or more years went from 61.7% all the way to nearly 84%. Coincidentally, at the bottom, as you look at those teachers with 0 to 5 years or fewer years, less experience, going from 38% to 16%. We consider ourselves a destination district in the sense that we believe we attract high-quality staff. We also attract veteran staff that want to come live in Liberty and serve the students that we have. In addition to the human resources side, as we were looking at our district, we realized that we have a lot of programs and initiatives, some of which we can capture like we've done here on this slide, but there are a lot of others that aren't reflected here. From those that occur inside the classroom, those that occur outside of the classroom, those that occur after hours. You can see a glimpse of the work that we do from character education on the top right to the activities that we provide through the Missouri State High School Activities Association, the work of many of our partners, whether it's the District Foundation, Northland CAPS, partnership with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. This reflects the innovative work that we're doing in our district and the opportunities that are afforded our students each and every day. In addition to that, as we talk through our expectation, our innovative work, we try to compare ourselves to our peers. So how are those districts that are most like us performing? As we stated earlier on our annual performance report, we had a 98.2% rate of performance, which is exceptional. But at the same time, we know that we have areas that we can improve upon or that we can grow in. So as we compare ourselves to our peer districts, they include districts like Raymore Peculiar, Kearney, Blue Springs, Grain Valley, Lee Summit, all the way to Parkway, Melville, Lindbergh on the eastern side of the state. But then also looking at districts beyond Missouri to see the innovative work that they're doing and how we compare in that respect. So the data sets that are presented here include a lot of information from academic to financial that are captured in that annual performance report. And so you can see by kind of glancing through these, there's a lot of indicators that we can identify areas that maybe we exceed the performance of our peers, but at the same time, maybe we're a little bit behind our peers in that we can identify some areas that we need to grow in. As you think about this month and you think about the work that's going on in our district, a key opportunity in the month of April and first part of March is really performance as it relates to assessments. And that is a huge driver at the state level in respect to how districts are evaluated as it relates to that annual performance report. We know that's an important indicator. We know that that's not the sole indicator. So from our perspective, from the board all the way down to the classroom, it's not about a one-shot test at the end of a year. It's really about the progression and the growth that a child makes, whether they're a kindergartner or an outgoing senior, from the moment they start in August to the time they exit at the end of May. And so while we look at this data importantly, there's a whole lot more that we can pull out of our classrooms and see the great work that our teachers are doing on a daily basis. Other areas, whether it relates to assessment or graduation rate, other demographic information, we monitor and have frequent conversations within our district leadership team, our strategic leadership team, as well as at the board level. To fast forward a little bit, we're in a little bit of transition as it relates to the state of Missouri and accreditation specifically. We're exiting the 5th cycle of the Missouri School Improvement Program, which is our accreditation process, and beginning to have discussions as to what the next cycle of accreditation looks like for the state of Missouri, MSIP cycle number 6. We have several from the metropolitan area that are working in that process to inform DESE, to provide input as to what that next cycle looks like. The key takeaways for classrooms and teachers, students, and parents is the fact that we're going to still have an emphasis on assessment, but it will likely look different as the accreditation rules evolve or change to that next cycle of the school accreditation program. Switching briefly to operations and finance. We have a lot going on. We don't have large construction projects that are ongoing. We finished a couple of those up over the course of the last couple of summers. But nonetheless, we're in that mode of planning. Whether it be planning for the next fiscal budget in terms of fiscal year 2018 and watching to see what the state's going to do to us. Some information that we received from the legislature is their intent to be able to fully fund the foundation formula, which in my time as a superintendent over the last 10 years would be the very first time that they get close to fully funding the formula. So there's still a lot of logistics to be worked out over the course of that conversation, but we know that the legislative session ends tomorrow, actually. So May 12th is the last day of the legislative session, which then will have an impact on state budgets across the state of Missouri. Appreciate Cindy Sullivan and her team working to manage that. As we look over the spring semester, that process really starts early on. It starts even in the fall, but in the spring, we pick up our pace as it relates to planning for the budget. That starts with our legislature in respect to them kind of wrapping their head as to what the state budget's going to look like, and then us being able to project, based on the best information that we have available to us, what the revenue stream will likely look like. So a couple of key graphs, the first of which is where do our revenues come from? In terms of our revenues, 55% of it is based off of local assessment. That being property assessment on commercial and industrial. You also have personal property assessment values that generate revenue from that local level. In addition to that, you have smaller percentages that come from the federal, close to 3%, and the county revenue is just under 2%. The larger portion of the pie is that near 40% of state funding that we receive, which is captured primarily in foundation formula, as well as some additional categorical revenue streams like transportation, parents as teachers, some of those pieces that we see from the state level. So it's a little bit of a balance in respect to the portions that we receive locally, but then also the portion that we receive at the state level, with those ancillary revenue streams being relatively minor, both at the federal and at the county level. At the local level, that's entirely contingent on our growth in respect to assessed valuation, how properties are valued as they are reassessed, but then at the same time, our tax rate and the revenue stream that combination of assessed valuation and tax rate creates for us to be able to utilize as we expend district dollars on our needs and priorities. With that said, transition to our expenditures. Like any organization, the majority of your expenditures are going to be tied up in people, be it salaries or benefits. So as you look through this pie chart, about 52%, about $79, $80 million is allocated to salaries, and you can see how the remaining 24% to the side, at nearly $24 million, those two make up the majority of our expenditures. As you kind of sift clockwise throughout that graphic, Purchase services, materials and supplies, capital projects, as well as our debt management encompass the rest of our expenditures as a district. In total, that gets us close to about $140 million in respect to our annual budget. So again, appreciate Cindy and her team as we've walked to this spring, through this spring, getting the best information that is available to us as we build our budget, as we connect with our directors, as we connect with our principals to identify what their building level needs are, but then at the same time what those departmental level needs are, both academic as well as co-curricular, extracurricular activities in terms of rounding out our budget. On the operations side, we've been very busy with long-range planning, and many of you have participated in this process. Walking through these phases, we are actually now at step 4, so we have moved beyond planning criteria to exploring options. And that's really kind of an exciting stage for us. But to give you some history over the course of this year, we initiated this project earlier in the school year. And then as we entered into the spring semester, worked with our Board of Education to draft some planning criteria that then we took to our community through a couple of community engagement events, as well as an online survey. We had participation in both of those venues combined with over 350 individuals providing feedback for us. The result of that was the addition of a couple of planning criteria, but at the same time, a very lengthy list of additional items that we might want to consider that we called the parking lot. Just recently, we took those items and as a district leadership team began walking through them to identify those common themes that may exist. Then also taking it a step further and identifying whether or not those issues need to be folded into the long-range plan or be tagged to a sitting administrator to be able to address here and now, whether it's a management option or an operations issue, whatever the case may be. So are they items that fold into the long-range planning conversations to come, or are they things that we can dive into to try to find a solution today? So we're in the process of working through that. And shifting from planning criteria up to the exploring options phase, we started that conversation earlier this month with our Board of Education at our study session. And looking at the status quo per se, our elementary schools and how they feed up to our middle level, but then certainly how they feed up to our high school. That was our first option. Then as we looked through 5 or 6 other iterations, we started looking at options to consider as we continue to grow. So picture in your mind a train track. If that train track is headed this direction, we're currently at 12,500 students as we saw earlier. What happens when we hit 14,000 students? What happens when we hit 18,000 or 25,000 students? So as we consider options, we need to have our sights set on really what a full build out of the district looks like. And as we talk about that, that's really a ballpark figure of say 22,000 students. Once we get to 22,000 students, what does our structure look like at the elementary level, the middle level, but then certainly the high school? So if you have that in mind, there are several incremental steps that have to occur between now and that full build out. Traditional options that you might have well been used to as a student going through yourselves, but then at the same time, maybe some options we've not yet thought about. Does a school setting have to have a physical space? Think about it at the high school level. As students engage more with business partners and they engage in the workplace, you take a certain population of students out of the physical space at a high school and you have them engaging elsewhere. So those types of opportunities impact our organization, they impact the buildings that we're going to build, they impact our options as we look forward. So our intent is to bring a couple of options to our Board of Education at their May meeting on May 22nd to be able to finalize 2 to 3 examples that we think might fit us best, both long-term, but then also some of those incremental steps along the way. We're going to take a little bit of a break over the course of the summer, and then we're going to reconvene in the fall having this long-range planning conversation. Re-engage our community to see what they feel best fits our needs. The only other thing I would add is that inevitably, as we continue to grow, the boundaries conversation has to take place. Nobody wants to hear that, but at the same time, that's a conversation that we need to be open about and transparent about as we continue to grow and watch development in and across the city of Kansas City side, but then also the city of Liberty side. So more to come in that respect. We're going to fold in our facility assessments at each of our buildings as to what their needs are, what their capacities are, and then that will form the conversations at the local building level, whether it be at the high school level, the middle level, or the elementary schools. Each building will have those conversations in respect to their capacities, where we can add on, what we can renovate, then also those conversations about new sites, new schools as we continue to grow as a school district. In the end, what we hope to be able to have as we shelve this portion of the long-range plan and the process is a master plan that then will be able to kind of chart out our course over the next couple of years. Whether that could be an anticipated bond issue and when that might show up on a ballot, to specific projects that you might have captured over here. So this is just a mock or a draft of what our master plan would look like as we walk through those phases. We're not there yet. That will likely come later this fall as we put more detail to our long-range planning efforts. The one thing we have our sights on is a potential bond issue in the spring of 2018. That bond issue, though, is predicated on our demographic projections as we continue to grow. So as we see that train track that says, if and when we get to this number of students, we need to execute on a facility standpoint by doing this. So currently we're in the process of a demographic study. We did one about 3 years ago. We're due every 2 to 3 years to do that again. So we hope to be able to have those refreshed numbers sometime later this summer as we pull back together in the fall to chart our course as it relates to our master plan. The only other item under operations would be our Building Pride campaign. And as we mentioned earlier, the Liberty School District Foundation appreciate their leadership along with many of our team that has worked closely with that. It's a pretty lofty goal to be able to complete complexes at both high schools, a total price tag of $6.4 million, and currently in the process of wrapping up the campaign in terms of fundraising with a goal of $4.9 million to be raised or more. We would certainly welcome more. But that's coming to close in the next couple of weeks. What you will see over the course of this month and then also into the summer is the process continuing to unfold. Whether it is accepting bids, taking those to the Board of Education for recommendation, talking about our financing structure moving forward, or whether it's the actual work that begins to take place over the course of the summer in respect to both footprints that we have at Liberty High School, but then also at Liberty North High School as well. So it's exciting to envision what this could look like and the impact that it will have on our community as well as our students for years to come. Switching over to academic services, this year has involved a tremendous amount of work on this first side in curricular alignment. In fact, today marks the final meeting of our curriculum councils. Our secondary curriculum council met this morning. Our elementary crew comes in this afternoon as they celebrate their work, but then also look forward in terms of what has yet to be done. A lot of that is rooted in conversations that you may recall as it relates to the Common Core state standards and some concern that multiple people across the country had, but then involving the state legislature that then evolved to House Bill 1490, which then resulted in the Missouri Learning Standards. So it's been quite a journey in getting from revised standards at the Common Core level all the way to where we're at today. And I would say this, and I challenged our staff this morning and celebrated them for the amount of work that they have done, and that it's not only impacting Liberty Public Schools, but they're having a tremendous impact across our state, if not our nation, as we lead the way in developing curriculum. So looking forward to next year, switching over to 17-18, curriculum implementation is really a next big piece as we operationalize curricular standards into what happens in the classroom, but then also have our eyes set on that next phase of assessment that's going to come through MSIP cycle number 6. In the middle, you can see our areas of focus. At our youngest levels, really focusing on literacy, but then what does balanced literacy look like from elementary to middle level to high school and helping those students that struggle even in the secondary years as it relates to reading. Project-based learning and continuing to move forward with that. We've taken a pretty aggressive approach in professional development and training our teachers as it relates to relevant real-world learning experiences, which could be identifying an idea or an area you're passionate about and developing a product. It might be identifying a problem within a business and then trying to solve it, going back to that business and presenting on solutions that students then are leading. So that's exciting to see as we continue to train more and more teachers across our district, grades K through 12 and project-based learning. The other piece that we're really just starting to walk to is arts integration. So we talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but how do you integrate the arts? And it's not solely drawing, it's not solely vocal or instrumental music, it's creativity and it's engagement. That's what we mean by integrating the arts into STEM. And so it may include the vocal, the instrumental, the performance piece, the arts piece, but how do we engage? How do we tap into students' creativity? We know that they have it at an early age, but we know that as they mature, some of that engagement and creativity lags, but we want to continue to sustain that. If anything, we want to grow that from the time they're in elementary to the time they leave us out of Liberty Public Schools and take their place in the world. So we're going to continue that focus. More specifically, professional training in these three areas. As we've mentioned at the top, our problem-based learning or project-based learning is facilitated through the Buck Institute. Below that, content development, which is specifically related to curriculum alignment and curriculum implementation. But then also visible learning. Visible learning relates to best practices. So what strategies, what instructional approaches that we know are rooted in research that have high yields or high impact on student achievement or student gains can we inform and train our teachers about that they will be equipped in their toolbox to be able to utilize with students of varying degree levels from varying backgrounds. That's really the purpose of visible learning. So when we talk about innovation in Liberty Public Schools, it's not necessarily about a device as it relates to one-to-one. Innovation in instructional capacity and instructional strategy and instructional approach and pedagogy is probably the foundation of everything that we do. If we get that right, then we can couple it with tools. We can couple it with experiences both in the classroom and outside of the classroom to have the best learning experience and opportunity for our kids. So with that said, as we move from the academic side of things, there are some other areas that we need to be mindful of, and that really is caught up in the well-being of kids, the well-being of our learners. And so we've spent a tremendous amount of time focusing on social emotional needs and what those needs are of a diverse set of 12,500 students. In addition to that, conscious discipline, as that started at the early childhood center, but then now has been integrated into some of the younger grade levels at the elementary and will continue to grow. Then also trauma training, and that we know that from traumatic experiences, students are inhibited from the amount of learning and focus on academics that perhaps would exist without that traumatic experience. We need to wrap our heads around these issues and be supportive of our students both academically, but then also from that social emotional side of things. With those two pieces combined, that's where the whole child comes to mind, and that's in the sense that we're meeting both their academic needs, but then the social emotional needs that they bring to us in terms of getting them equipped to best learn. So we're going to continue that work, be it academic or be it within supporting our learners. But then what we noticed as we try to tie these two pieces together from the start of our conversation and our advanced ed visit and what Liberty Public Schools looks like and what it's made up of, to all the pieces we've shared in between, here are the findings or the results of our visit with our advanced ed team. They did two things. They identified some areas of continuous improvement of which we need to focus on, but then they also highlighted things that they viewed as powerful practices. So in total, you have about 32,000 districts and communities that participate in advanced ed accreditation across the state of Missouri. Overwhelmingly, across all standards and across all categories, we exceeded the average that they see in those 32,000 districts that they visit. So we hosted a team of about 7 individuals at the beginning of April on a 3-day visit. They connected with us through a variety of interviews. Some of you may have sat through interviews with them. In addition to that, they got into classrooms and conducted classroom walkthroughs. In total, they had nearly 300 interviews that they participated in over a 3-day period. In addition, many of our parents and teachers and students participated in a survey. So through all of that, they identified these powerful practices. And so congratulations to our district for successfully completing that accreditation with high marks, but at the same time, we know we are a work in progress. And if at any point we stop saying we are a work in progress, something's gone wrong. And so those powerful practices include communicating information about student and school performance to stakeholders. They thought that we do a really good job with that. I still think we can improve on that, as we can always improve and communicate better and more effectively. In addition, supervision and evaluation processes for teachers. And that's not supervision as a gotcha, that's supervision more as a support in respect to how can we see how things are going, but then come alongside you and provide that professional support, development, and training along the way. That is due in respect to an evaluation system that we put into play a couple of years ago when we transitioned, and that's the Network for Educator Effectiveness in partnership with the University of Missouri. It really is probably the most robust evaluation system that I've seen in my 20 years in education in terms of supporting teachers and making it a focus on instructional conversations and improvement and development, albeit it's a lot of work. The third piece that they identified is really our desire to continuously improve. And honestly, that's probably my favorite, and that we should always be in that mindset, that growth mindset, that continuous improvement cycle of wanting to find better ways of how we can meet students' needs, because ultimately that's what it's about. In addition, though, operationally, management-wise, whatever the case may be, there are other things that we can take this model and approach and be certain that we're ever evolving and ever reflecting on the work that we do as a school district in all areas. A couple of other powerful practices, the autonomy that's provided by our Board of Education, and really this has everything to do with expectations, and it's not as though it's hands-off, it's truly we have high expectations of our administrators and our staff, and the board really is leading that charge as we look forward as a school district in operationalizing our strategic plan. In addition, technology, infrastructure, and you can see the rest of the descriptor there was a powerful practice that was identified. And again, it's not solely about the tool, it's about the pedagogy and the instruction, and then those tools are added to improve that experience in the classroom. And then the last piece, as was reflected by some of the data that we shared, the fact that the external team realized the exceptional staff that we have, both in their practice as they were walking through classrooms, but then certainly as they look at some of the data as it relates to degree attainment, longevity, years of experience. We certainly could not do what we do without the help of our teachers and the great work that they do in the classroom. In addition to powerful practices, 2 improvement priorities were identified, and you may be able to resonate with some of these. The first of which was a consistent grading policy that articulates expectations in terms of expectation around content knowledge as well as skill across grade levels and courses. So that's something that was identified, and by that I think we mean elementary, middle, and high school in terms of some degree of consistency. So we're going to explore this as to what we might be able to do a little bit better in the future at all of our grade levels, but then also at all of our content areas. The last one is in respect to how each individual building can communicate their purpose and mission on a regular basis. This is messaging. This is storytelling, in the sense that we know there are great things that are going on in our district. We know there are great things going on in our schools. Maybe if you're a parent that has an elementary school, you're more focused on the elementary school your child attends. But how can we better tell the story within our schools, but then with all of our departments, so that others will be aware of the great work that we're doing in our school system, but then also those areas of maybe some areas we need to improve upon, or that we need to partner with our community and our parents towards solutions. So that really is an overview of the Advanced Ed accreditation process. Some great powerful practices that we still think we need to improve upon a little bit, but then also some specific ideas that they identified of which we will continue to explore and make some change. The last thing I want to share with you, and this is again messaging, and that if you've sat in presentations before, maybe attended another coffee with the community, I would kick myself if I didn't pull the vision priorities out and what it means to be learner-centered. And that this truly is kind of where we're at as a school district. Learner-centered around every 12,500 of our students, including relationships and the value of that, but in the value of a different context, 21st century. As teachers relate to students, as bus drivers, as support staff relate to students. Sometimes that teacher is at the front of the room conducting a lecture. Other times they're alongside a small group of students facilitating a team discussion or a project. Other times they may take a back seat and let the students actually lead the instruction, in which they're learning as much from the student as others are, and that the student may actually be the expert in the room. In addition to that, informed decision making is something we talk about, but we talk about it in 2 forms. It's utilizing data that's available to us to inform our decisions, but then it's also utilizing best practice. And that what is best practice as it relates to instructional strategies, pedagogy like we mentioned earlier, but then at the same time, what is best practice for some of our operations and support staff categories and departments as it relates to systems, operations, continuous improvement, financing, budgeting, whatever the case may be. How can we make those informed decisions made on those two areas? Best practice, but then also what the data is telling us. Personalization is another piece. Personalization in that we have the ability, based on our instructional strategies and what the data tells us and what our tools allow us to do, to truly personalize or tailor or customize the learning experience for our students. If you think of the Amazon, the online ordering processes, where even when you log in, they start suggesting various things you might be interested in. Or on Pandora, then cycles through your playlist and says, you may also like this person or this person. You can give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We're not quite there, but the reality of it is we can personalize better today than ever before, and that our teachers know our students, and they know what those specific needs are based on what they're doing in the classroom. The next component is learner agency, and that's ownership of their learning. So by tapping into a student's interests and their passions, they're able to explore things that are rooted in curriculum standards, that are in line with the work that we want out of every content area and grade level, but it's really tailored to their interests and their passions. Project Lead the Way is an example of this, in which what we've seen is students that typically would maybe be on the outskirts and disengaged in a traditional classroom now are at the forefront leading because the delivery and the approach is different. The content is the same. It's science, it's mathematics, it's engineering, but guess what? That student is highly engaged in creative processes that they now own as part of the learning process and facilitating teams and enjoying that experience along the way. The last piece for all of us, whether you're a board member, a parent, a student, a superintendent, a custodian or driver, whatever role you have within Liberty Public Schools or our community, do we possess collectively a growth mindset, and that we want to be better than where we're currently at. Hopefully we don't get stuck in a rut with content on the status quo, but at the end of the day we want to continually grow individually, but then collectively as we seek to serve our students. With that said, there's one final piece, and I've shared this before, and that's taking the best of the classroom, the best of that virtual or digital experience with the tools that we have, but then also that experiential piece. And I think we're still at kind of this level where the majority of our work takes place in the classroom. We've pulled in that digital piece or that virtual piece. We're dabbling with that experiential component through a lot of opportunities through Northland CAPS, internships, externships, visits to various organizations and companies across Kansas City. But really, if we take the best of those three areas, here at the center, you have an apex of which you're truly drawing from the best of the classroom, the best of that virtual piece, and the best of that experiential piece. That's where I think we hit a home run in respect to opportunities for kids that draw in a variety of skills, whether it's design thinking, project management, whether it's entrepreneurial skills, pulling all of those together for them to be able to own their learning. That's going to benefit them in respect to any college degree that they pursue or any career path that they may find themselves in years to come. So that's a little bit of an overview as to where we're at in Liberty Public Schools for 2016-17. Again, appreciate Dallas and his team for all of their work in facilitating our coffee with the communities this year. We look forward to racking that up again come September. And so we'll be announcing that and the topics that will be taking place over the course of this next year. With that said, my final thing would be to open it up to anyone here in attendance today for any questions that you may have. Any questions from the audience? We're glad to have a couple of kiddos with us today too, so that's always fun. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Can you just repeat the process for the next step in the long-range planning? That was, you're taking a break kind of over the summer, but you'll ratchet that up right at the beginning of the fall?
Yeah. So think of two things. Think of the long-range planning process, and then think of the master plan. Okay, so the master plan is the byproduct of the process that we've said we're going to pursue. So the planning criteria, big piece. The options piece, another big piece. Once that is somewhat solidified, we're going to pull back in the facility data and information that was gathered with our principals at the building level for Donovan all the way to the ECC, all the way to Liberty North, and then really start digesting that. That work probably won't happen until the start of the fall. Those two things, the options as well as the building specific data, help to inform the specific list of needs at each building. So Donovan may identify, well, we have a wing that we may have some capacity of a couple of classrooms, but we know that as soon as those are maxed out, based on our demographic projection, we may need to add on. And again, this is hypothetical. So we may identify an area next to Donovan where we could add on in kind of a shaded space, but all that's going to be driven by the demographic projections. So all of this is playing out as we enter into the fall. There's an engagement piece certainly around options in terms of those 2 or 3 options that we push out. We want the community's feedback. So we feel, and tell me otherwise, we feel that the community dialogue that we had through those 2 engagement meetings was successful. We've identified a couple of populations in Liberty that we would want to solicit to the table specifically. We didn't have a whole lot of senior citizen participation, so we're kind of thinking through how we could do that differently. But how can we engage people around those options to say this option truly best fits where we're headed as a district as we continue to grow? With all the complexities in that, I think we would be foolish as administrators, as a Board of Education, not to come to the table with a couple of recommendations and then allow the community to provide that feedback on. Once that long-range planning process is done, and then we develop the actual master plan, that will take all of those building-specific topics that we've identified with the help of our principals, who we want them to engage with their families as well and their teachers and staff. And then the next step would be, once you have that across the entire system, prioritizing what the needs are, but then you also have to have that financial conversation as it relates to debt management and our debt structure, bonding capacity, and then start saying, okay, how far down our priorities list can we go? But the driver being growth. Second to that, what are the building-specific needs that we want to be able to capture? One of the things that bubbled up out of the planning criteria, and I think you know this, was the value in equity from a programming standpoint and extracurricular activities. And so as we look across elementary and middle level and high school level, are we providing similar opportunities for kids across the entire system? So I know that's a priority. So that's forthcoming. The other thing that is important to message, and since you all are here, feel free to shout this from the rooftops, is the work that our Board of Education has done around debt service and debt management. With a growing district, with some relatively restricted funds as it relates to our assessed valuation, we don't have as a high assessed valuation as some of our neighbors that are smaller than us. We've had to be creative as it relates to restructuring some of our debt, refinancing it, extending it out to where we've grown our bonding capacity. So our hope is, as we look to that next bond issue, and our placeholder again is spring of 2018, albeit that may fluctuate, no sooner, but it could be later depending on those demographic projections and numbers, we hope to be able to put a bond issue out there at a no tax levy increase, which I think is phenomenal. If not the next bond issue, perhaps even the next 2 bond issues as no tax levy increases. And that we've been pretty creative as a Board of Education in exploring options and really taking advantage of low interest rates in terms of the refinancing and restructuring. So that's a long answer to your question, but the detail is lacking. If people start wondering, well, what's going to happen at Lewis and Clark, or what's going to happen at Manor Hill or at the high schools, that's forthcoming. That'll be the work this fall. Good question. What else?
I have a follow-up to that.
Yes.
When you mentioned the demographic information that's pending, what are the dependencies on that as far as, is it state level information?
It's really local. It's outsourced through a demographer. And previously we were using a company called Applied Economics. We recently did an RFP for a variety of services related to long-range planning, one of which was a demographic study. And so we've selected a consultant by the name of Patron Insight. Is that correct? Business Information Services, thanks. That is conducting that work. So they've already started it. The contingencies are connecting with both municipalities to see what data they're looking at, what growth they're looking at. But then really, I mean, it's pretty complex, but connecting with developers, seeing what their developments are going to look like. So as you look to Homestead, south towards the Liberty Parkway, as you look north as to the development that could happen around Liberty North High School, connecting with them to be able to track and see what their phasing looks like. But then you add a student yield as to how many houses produce X number of students. But then you're also looking at existing neighborhoods and the life cycle of a neighborhood. I think I've talked about this before in multiple settings, but they typically run a course of, young families, and then those families graduate their kids, and then those families become older. Well, then they sell their homes, and then you have a resurgence within that neighborhood who you had a large population from, and then it wanes a little bit, and then it kicks back up. So you can do some demographic studies around that, but all of those pieces combined together hopefully will give us the best information that we know. Here's the disclaimer. As we looked to the Shoal Creek area several years ago, it was projected that they would have a population around this time of about 10,000 residents. Well, guess what? They far exceeded that. In that same amount of time, now you're looking at over 30,000 residents populating that Shoal Creek area. So we're going to hit the target as best as we know it based on the data that we have, and then start decision making. But then at the same time, and we say this whether it's with budgeting or demographic projections, it's only as good as the data we have today. So that's the difficulty. But we want to certainly make projections most informed as possible, but then also make wise decisions as to how we execute. So, another good question. What else from the crowd? We will stick around. Appreciate you participating over the course of this year for those of you that have been to multiple Coffee with the Communities. Look forward to connecting with you again. Hope you have a great summer, and we'll certainly stick around to answer any additional questions that you might have. So have a great rest of this week.